Today's Daf Yomi is Bava Kamma Daf Peidal, Bava Kamma 84. We're going to start on Pei Gimel on the base, 4 lines from the bottom. Today's Daf Yomi is dedicated for Yeshua, for all of Am Yisrael in this difficult time. And Eis Tzara, there should be a Shmira on the Chayalim, a Hatzala of the Shvuyim. Tanya Rabbi Dustai ben Yehuda Omer. So we're discussing the case. It says an eye for an eye, which our Mishnah says means money. And we want to prove, how do we know that an eye for an eye means a compensatory payment and not an actual eye? So we've seen one attempt, and the Gemara gives another one. Rabbi Dustai ben Yehuda Omer, ayin tachas ayin is mammon, is money. Tamer mammon aleinu el ayin mamash. Maybe it's an actual eye. Can't be. Amra sharaya shahaisa inu shel zeh gedola meinu shel zeh katan. If one guy eye is big and the other guy's eye is small, or some say it means one guy has good eyesight, the other guy has bad eyesight. How could I do an eye for an eye? It's not the same. And if you say, well, in that case, the Torah will say, just pay, don't give the eye. Torah Amra, it has to be the same law. So it has to be the same law. So it can't be an eye for an eye. So it has to be money. So Gemara says, Amri mai kusha. That's no question. Maybe he blinded the other guy, so we have to blind him. Because if you're not going to take that approach on top of Peidawad Amid Aleph, we say Katan Charagas Agadol, the Gadol Charagas Akatan. You have a small person who killed a big person, or a big person who killed a small person. How would we ever kill them? Torah Amra Mishpat Echad Yelachem. Torah says one law, Mishpat Hashaval Kulchem. It should be the same law. He took a soul, we take his soul. If he blinded him, maybe we would think to blind him. So it's not a proof. So we could still, from this point, this is not a proof that ayin tachazayin means money. Alternatively, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says a different price. Ayin tachazayin is mammon, it's money. I tell him, mammon, maybe it's an actual eye. Can't be. Let's say he was blind and he blinded somebody who was missing an arm, and he cut off somebody else's arm, or he was lame and he cut off somebody's leg. But I can't fulfill an eye for an eye. He doesn't have an eye. What would I do there? He doesn't have an eye. How could I do an eye for an eye? And the Torah says one equal law. So it must be an eye for eye is monetary. Gemara says, "My kushya dilma echad efshar efshar echad lo efshar lo efshar." He says maybe where it's possible you would do it. Possible you do an eye for an eye, but where it's not possible, then you don't do anything. Patrina way, and we don't give him any punishment. Because there's a similar case, a treifa, a person whose mortal injury is going to die within a year. Shahari gets a shalim if he kills somebody. What would we do to him? We can't punish him. We can't kill him. So it's not a proof. I mean, instead we could just think that if we can't punish him, we'll release him. Rashi says, we can't execute the treifa. Why not? Because he's already considered like a dead man. It's testimony that you can't impeach. Peturim, because if there would be false witnesses that would come against him, the Edim Zomim, they would be exempt. The Gavra Katila because they're coming to kill a person who's already dead. So he himself is also exempt from the punishment. And that's the Gemara in Sanhedrin. The Be'er B'Shmuel Tana, different approach. The Be'er B'Shmuel taught, Amakra, Ken Yinah Same Bow. It says in the Pasuk that it says an eye for an eye. If you put a blemish on a person, so it should be done to him. And nesina means money. You make him pay. Gemara says, what about the fact that it says in the verse, Kasher Yitem Adam, when a person makes a blemish on another person? Well, there it's clearly Hachinami the Mamanu. How could that be? That can't be money. That's the initial act of the wound. So what's that referring to? So Amrit very small, Krayisera Darsh. There's an extra verse. That they expound. So since in the next pasuk it says a man puts an affliction or in the earlier pasuk, it said, Ishki te mumba miso. If person put a wound on his friend, kasher asa Kenya asalo. That's the case. Kenya nasim bo amli. The words Kenya nasim bo are extra. Shmamina mamon. So it's to tell us it's compensatory. They pay money. So the Gemara says, kasher yitemum ba'adam amli. So if that's the case, what's kasher yitemum ba'adam teaching us? So the Gemara says, I did buy milchtav Kenya nasim bo kasav nami kasher yitemum ba'adam. So it's just because of the flow of the text, it's not necessarily teaching us something different. Today, Rebbe Chia Tana, a different approach. Amar Kra Yad B'Yad. It says in the pasuk with respect to an Eid Zomim, just like they tried to do to you, a hand against a hand, which means to say that's what you should punish him. But the Brisa says Davar Anise Yad. The Brisa means something that's given from hand to hand. It means that what you do is you pay money. If that's the case, you don't chop off his hand, but you make them pay money. So that's what it's teaching us about an Eid Zomim. So the Gemara says, regal nami, your dress should be about foot for a foot. You don't hand something to another from one foot to another. So the Gemara says, Amri de Beirevchia, Kraya Kadarashi. No, they're expounding an extra verse. Meaning to say, since it says that you shall do them like he tried to do to his brother, so if it was actual, why would it say yad biyad? Meaning to say, it already said you're supposed to do it. So Shema Mina Mamon. So when it says yad biyad, it's teach us money. And if that's the case, regal b'regal, we want to say foot or a foot. Well, there it's just because I did the chsiv yad biyad, chsiv nami regal. Since it's just the flow of the text, and it says hand in hand, also says foot. Abaye now, we're in the time of the Gemara, we're no longer citing Brises. But Abaye cites the Brise. Abaye Amar miditani b'echizkia. Asi miditani b'echizkia. Ditani b'echizkia. Abaye says ayin tachas ayin. That what did the Tani b'echizkia teach us? An eye for an eye, nefesh tachas nefesh, and a soul for a soul. Vo nefesh v'ayin tachas ayin, but not a soul and an eye in exchange for an eye. V'isakadaitach mamish. And if you're going to say it's an actual eye for an eye, zimnen the mishkachas like ayin v'nefesh tachas ayin. Sometimes the guy, you take out his eye and he'll kill him. It'll be an eye and a soul for an eye. This is like Shakespeare's argument in A Merchant of Venice. The Bahadi the other way, because when you blinded him, sometimes he'll die. So Gemara says, my question, that's no question. Maybe we have to evaluate him. And he matzi mikabel. Avdina, and if he could receive the blow of the taking out of the eye, we give it to him. And if he can't receive it, we don't give it to him. And let's say we do take out his eye, and he actually dies as a result. Imayis, lemus. If he dies, he dies. That's it. Milo Tanan Gabi Malchus. We have a similar scenario with respect to lashes. Let's say you evaluate the guy who can receive the lashes and he dies. The people are exempt. That's just the breaks. You did your crime, and we did our best faith efforts to make sure you didn't die. But if you die, it's a sign of God. Rava Amar Krai says we're based upon the verse, or a different approach. That means to say, in addition to paying damages, you also have to pay the pain. Pay the penalty for the pain you caused. If you say it's an actual eye for an eye. What does it mean that there's damages and pain? The same thing that you do to him when you take out his eye, that'll be exact same pain. So it's obviously we're talking about a monetary payment plus the payment for pain. Where it says, my question, that's no question. So maybe one person has more pain and then the other one has less pain based upon their fortitude. And you pay the difference. Maybe that's all it's saying. Papa made the Rava Amar Papa based upon a different passage. It says it's Papa says you have to pay the medical expenses in addition to the damages. If you're going to say it's actual eye for an eye, the same question as the Baye. It means just say, just like this one has medical expenses, the same medical expenses for taking out the eye or the arm. So the Gemara says, no, my kusha, dilma ika the sak v'shav yahai, v'ika the lo sak b'sari high. Maybe one's flesh heals quicker and the other one heals slower. So my nafkamino, misway hach beni beni, to pay the difference. Rashi says, Asya, tachas mishur, a different approach. Rashi says we learn it out from an like comparing the word tachas that appears by an ox. It says ksiv hacha. It says here ayin tachas, ayin an eye for an eye. But ksiv hasam says by an ox. Shalem mishalem shor tachas ashor. The ox has you have to pay in exchange for the ox. Malal, and just like by the ox, it's mammon, it's money. Avkan mammon. Also by an eye, it's money. Sigmar says my chazis deal off is tachas mishur. Why are we comparing it to an ox? Nef tachas miyadam. Why do you compare it to a man? You place a soul for a soul where you kill him. And so too you should take out the eye. Gemara says no. Gemara first asked the question, why don't we say just like there it's actual soul, here too it's an actual eye? Gemara says no, done in Nezikim and Nezikim. No, we're better off comparing it to an ox because that's both damages. It ain't done in Nezikim and Misa. And don't compare it to the case of an ox, a person, which is a case of death. Just the opposite. Compare it to another person and don't compare it to an animal. No, the word tachas also appears by an assault on a woman. And so therefore that's where we learn it out. So Adam Adam, Adam Adam, so from there we learn out a person we're comparing a person to another person, which says tachas, and in both cases, it's damages and not actual death. So that, and just like there, it's money. So too here, it's going to be money. Seems to be conclusive, but we have more approaches. Tanya Rebbe Lazar Omer ayin tachas ayin mamish. So Rebbe Lazar says the opposite. He says an eye for an eye is an actual eye. The Gemara says mamish salkadaitach, actual eye. So Gemara says Rebbe Eliezer lays like a Chohani Tanai. Rebbe Eliezer is arguing with all these Tanaim. He doesn't think it's money. Amar Rabba or Rava Lomar she'ain shamano so Evan, meaning to say we don't view him as a slave. Meaning to say when we calculate the eye, we don't say what we don't view him on the slave market. Abai says you mean to say the depreciation. So Abai says, what do you mean? El Kaman Ben Chorin. Ben Chorin is slave to me. We have to view him as a slave and how much he's sold. If we view him as a free person does no value. That's not possible. Elam Ravashi, you know what it means. What Rabbi Eliezer is saying, Lomar she'ain shamin oso benizik el b'mazik. We don't look at the value of the one who's lost his eye, but we look at the value of the one who did the damage. That's his actual eye. That's what we look at. That's what Rabbi Eliezer was saying. So Rashi says, "Eino shal mazik shaminan kamu shavel imakar achshav kamu yafa below ayin." How much is he worth now, and how much without an eye? When it says mamish, it means eino shal mazik nishamas tachas eino shal nizak. I mean, we look actually at his eye and compare it to the value of the eye of the person who was damaged. Hu chamra. So there was a donkey. They cut the yada dianuka. There was a donkey that cut off the hand of a child. Also, akame to Rav Papa Bar Shmuel. So they came to Rav Papa Bar Shmuel. Amru zilu Shmuel Yabrazvaram. Go pay him tzar ripoy sheves and boshes. The four things. Amru Rava v'hanan chamisha tanan. But didn't we say that in the Mishnah you pay nezek tzar ripoy sheves boshes? Five things. Amru lebarmi nezek kamina. I meant 4 plus damages. Amru abai v'chamaru. But he's a donkey. If a donkey does the damages, he only pays damages. He doesn't pay tsari, poi, sheves, and boches. He says, yeah, that's what I meant. Just pay the damages. So he says, yeah, but what do you mean we look at his damages? We have to look at him as though he's a slave. Don't we say that we have to look at it as though he's a slave, and what's his depreciation? So Amaru Zilu Shimuka Avda. He says, yeah, go look at him as though he's a slave. So Amaru Avua Dianuka, so the father of the child said, Lo Ba'ina Dezila Bei Milsa. I don't want him to be evaluated in this manner. This is disrespectful. It's traumatic for my kid. I don't want that going on. Bava Kamma so they said, so you're costing your child money. He says, yeah, when he grows older, I'll appease him. Maybe I'll give him the money or I'll explain it. Who Sora the Olas Yade Dianuka? There was an ox that chewed up the hand of a child. Also coming to Rava, he came to Rava. He said, Rava said, they said, go pay him as though he was a slave who lost his arm. But they said, aren't you the one who said that if anything that we have to evaluate like a slave, once we have to start doing those evaluations, we can't collect it in Babylon, that we don't have the authority. No, what we're talking about, titafas, that if he sees the money, we want to know if he sees the right amount. And if he sees it, then we wouldn't take it away from him if it was the right amount. This is consistent with what Rava taught, that he says if an ox damages another ox, if an ox damages a man, that we could collect in Babylon. But Niske Adam, but if an ox gores another man, Niske Adam Bashor, if a man gores another man, or if a man gores an ox, ain't Govanos of Bavel. That we don't collect in Bavel. Gemara says, why, if it's a man goring another man or a man goring an ox, that we don't? Elohim be'inam, because we need it to be a court, and they're not a actual court. The actual courts are in Israel. But if an ox scores another ox, or if an ox scores a man, Nami, also it should be the case. We're on the top of Pedal Base. It should also be the case, Elohim Ba'ina and Veleka. It should also be the case that we require an actual court, and there isn't. So why is it the case that if it's an ox and an ox and an ox and a man that we do in Babylon to adjudicate those cases? The principle is we're serving as their judges, and we're just serving as their agents, as the hand of the judges in Israel, and that's why we have the authority. Just like if a person made a loan and he admitted it, he come to the court, we have to enforce it. Otherwise, nobody would ever loan any money. So we have the authority in this case as well. So Gemara says, well, if that's the case, well, if that's the case, we should have the authority to also adjudicate cases of a man against another man, or a man who gores an ox. It's similar to the case of Odos Avos. The Gemara says, no. When do we act as their agents? By cases where it is basically that is very clear to them exactly the amount, like a loan, that you don't need to do any evaluations. But where it's not 100% clear, we don't do the agency. So the Gemara says, Amri, what are you talking about? An ox scores another ox, or an ox scores a man, there also needs evaluations. Why not? Just go out and look, see what an ox is sold for. If a man gores another man, or a man gores an ox, go out and see what a slave is sold for. Also, if you'd have to pay the punitive damages of double or 4 or 5 times the amount, the kitzi, which is a fixed amount, now we should act as their emissaries even in Babylon. So we have to have a different explanation. So when do we act as the agents of the court? When we're in Bava, when do we act as the agents of the court of Israel? When if it's just a straight compensatory case, but if it's punitive damages, then we don't do it. But a man and a man, so that's a case of pure compensatory. We should act as the emissaries of the land of Israel. Mar explains, when do we act as their agents? But milsa the shlicha, it has to be common case. But a person on another person, the shlicha, it's not common. We don't act as their agents. Mar says, but hare boshes, we take out the word pegam, or you can include it, it's depreciation, but humiliation, the shliach, which is common, we should act as their agents for cases of humiliation. That's very common. And so why don't we? So Gemara says, Amri hachinami, that is the case. We do act as their agents for that. Rav Papa collected 400 zuz to pay the humiliation penalty that he levied upon somebody. Gemara says, Rav Papa, we don't rule like Rav Papa. The Shalcha Rav Chisda Rav Nachman, that Rav Chisda sent a question to Rav Nachman about how to collect humiliation payments. Rav Nachman sent back, Chisda, Kinasa Kamma Gabes Babel. He said, Chista, Chista, are you collecting these punitive damages in Babylon? So we don't collect punitive damages in Babylon. When do we collect? When do we collect? When do we serve as their agents? By a common case. There has to be a common case, and there is an actual loss of money. But if it's something milsa the shlicha v'leis bechisaron something that's common, but there's no loss of money, or nami milsa the lo shlicha, or it's a case it's not common v'is bechisaron but you're still losing money. Law of din shechosayu. Therefore, we don't act as their agents. Hilkach adam ba'adam. So, a person, another person, afagav the is bechisaron kiss. Even though there's an actual loss of money, even the lo shlicha, since it's not common, law of din shechosayu, we don't serve as their agents. Boshas humiliation, afagav d'shlicha, even though humiliation is common, afagav d'shlicha, keeping the leis bechisaron kiss, since he's not actually losing money, we don't serve as their agents. The Gemara says, V'shor, govim bebavel, but an ox and another ox, we can collect. V'shor, govim bebavel, do we collect from one ox and another ox in Babylon? Lamarabba shor shehizik. There's an ox that did damage. Ain't govino some bebavel. We don't collect from it in Babylon. Gemara says, well, wait, the izikma, in that case, who is Rava talking about? Who did the damage? If you say it damaged a person, my area short the izik adam. Why would you say just an ox that cores a man? I feel adam the izik adam nami ain't governor so bubble. Even if a man damaged another man, we don't collect it in Babylon. El pshita the izik shore. If an ox scored another ox, the katani ain't governor so bubble. So we still don't collect it in Babylon. So Amri, yeah, what's that case? That's Hasam. In that case, is a betam. That's a tam. If a tam gores, since it's punitive damages, not exactly the same amount, we don't do collected in Babylon. And hacha, and when we say we collect an ox, of course, another ox, that's a muad, where it's full damages. Gemara says, "V'amarava a muad bebavel." But didn't Rava say that you can't establish a case of I'm sure muad and bavel, because since the only way it becomes a muad is after the goring of as a tam, and you don't bring it to the court, so how can the ox ever become a muad? So Gemara explains, Amri da ID Hasam by so it became a muad in Israel, and then they brought the ox to Babylon. Gemara says, but that's not common. If the case is not common, we don't act as their agent. Gemara says, the Asar Rabban da Hasam via Iduacha. But the rabbis from there came and testified about it here. So that's the scenario. Mara says, still, it's not common, and so therefore we shouldn't serve as their agents. So Gemara explains, when Rava says they would collect from the oxes of the damage, that's where if they did damage with tooth and foot. That there they were. So how can you have tooth on another animal? Tooth is we do something for your pleasure. So basically, it just like rubbed itself against the other animal. Or foot is in the normal manner of walking, it without malice did damage. And so therefore, these are muadim mitchilasan. These are inherently muad animals, and so therefore muad acts, and so therefore we adjudicate those cases in Babylon. All right, we'll stop the recording, but we'll go on with the daf.